And welcome back to the program. You're watching Mohawk TV's election 2012 coverage with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, of course. And we're moving on. We have another candidate in studio. Welcome to studio, Jeff. How are you?
Good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what's your background?
Well, for those that may not know me, my name is Jeffrey Diabo. My mother is Margaret Thomas, and her parents were Frank Thomas and Roseanne Jacobs. My father's the late Matty Diabo. His parents were Frank Diabo and Madeline Norton. I've been involved in the political scene of Kahnawake since the late 80s. I've been working directly with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake for the last 12 years as a technician. And I've been working a lot on a lot of the files that they've been involved in. So as far as my experience, as far as the political field, it's mostly from working with council.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What made you decide to run for chief and council?
Well, I just felt that, we need better, as I stated on the radio, we need better processes for engaging the community. I was directly involved with the development of the community decision-making process. However, at the time we were developing it, it was designed for involving the community in decisions, not lawmaking, which I feel is 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we should be right now, because it's really complicated making laws as opposed to just involving people in decisions. So that's one of the things that prompted me to want to get more involved as far as engaging the community, because I really don't see where there's adequate opportunities for the community to come forward and provide input, direction like they should be doing.
What type of experience do you have that demonstrate how you would be a good leader in this particular position?
Well, I don't necessarily use the word leader because of the hierarchical and authoritative connotations that go along with it. I see more of myself as more of just a person that, like in my technical role, to go out there, do the research, find out what the issues are, what's going on out there that could potentially affect our people, and then bring information back in order for people to have as much information as possible to make informed decisions. We're in a very complicated time right now. There's a lot going on, and we need people to be aware and be knowledgeable of things that are going on around us that will eventually affect us.
Right. Now, you had explained earlier that you currently work with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Tell us a little bit about that position. What do you do? What's your job there? Because not everybody will understand that.
Yeah. Well, originally I started out in 2000 working at the lands unit as a development officer for the unit itself. A year later, I was brought over to the Office of the Council of Chiefs, which used to be the intergovernmental relations team under Arnold Goodleaf. And that's when I started getting involved in the more of the political aspects of the files. My job at the time, my title was Mohawk Government of Kahnawake Development Officer. That was tied directly to and stemming from the mandate of 1979. And primarily my role was about looking at how do we change the systems and processes that we're using stemming from the Indian Act and moving more towards a culturally appropriate system of government in the community. And then that evolved into, once they started doing some reorg a couple of years ago, the position was changed to a coordinating role, basically just a title role, and I applied for that. I got the position, and essentially that's where we're at today.
Do you think a lot of people would be surprised that you're running for council? And maybe there's that perception, that you're more of a traditional person, that you have a more traditional mindset, and...
Well, as far as surprise, possibly, but I have been receiving some good feedback as far as wanting to get more involved and putting my name on the list. As far as people's perception of me, well, yeah, I do have a strong cultural foundation. I was very active in the Longhouse in the late 80s and the early 90s. I actually did work at the Nation office during and just after 90. But I don't I tend to try to not favor one over the other because as I've grown and learned, it's more about the people. You know, coming from the people and what the people see, what they're seeking, what they're desiring. Even as far as government for Kahnawake, what is it that the people want to do? Do they, you know, there's a poll as an example on Greg Horn's website where he's asking, you want a traditional system, the elected system, or a mixture of both? And the last time I looked, there was more votes for a mixture of both than one or the other. So it's very indicative of what the community is looking for. And there's other things that were done in the past, as an example. Maybe 2000, somewhere around there, late 90s, there was a Cynthia Chataway came in and did consultation with the community. And one of the most important and key statements I think that came out of a report was that the community sees both systems as necessary in a modern setting today. So they see the traditional system as a source of identity and things of that nature, culture. You know, and then they see the band council system as basically a source of security, is how she termed it. So you get up in the morning, you turn on the shower, there's water, the roads are cleared, and those types of things, the day-to-day things that people have come to expect.
What area of politics are you most interested in?
That's a difficult question because there's so much, you know. I mean, when we look at all the issues that we're facing today, like I talked about, not only on the radio, but at Candidates Night, I mean, we're looking at issues of self-sufficiency. As far as I'm concerned, it should be about self-sufficiency. We just went through the casino referendum, and I felt it was too narrow of a focus. You know, looking at only one item. I felt that we should be looking at a broader scope of options for the community to consider with regard to self-sufficiency. You know, we talk about land. You know, the scenery issue has been going on. You know, I talked to Stuart Phillips. It's been going on since the 60s. They've been looking at this thing and talking about it, investigating it, and whatever. You know, and I don't know if we're any closer to resolving that issue or not. I have my own views on that, but you know, we can talk about that at a different time. The membership is an outstanding one. There's still issues there. There's going to be more coming as a result of the McIver decision. You know, that's going to impact us in some way. We need to be talking about those things sooner rather than later. We can't wait until the last minute. One of the other ones that's on our doorstep now is what's called, we were calling it matrimonial real property, but now they call it matrimonial real interest, which potentially is going to affect about 10 areas of jurisdiction. So while we say, yes, we have jurisdiction, you know, if this thing goes through and our people avail themselves of this new law, they'll be going to a Quebec court that's going to be making decisions on what happens here on the reserve. You know, so if we want to talk about jurisdiction, which is another big one, well, then we have to start looking at these things. We need to start talking to the community about how we're going to handle these things. Where does the community want to go? How do they want to address it? We can't just leave things undone.
In your opinion, what are some of the biggest issues that, as a community, we need to deal with in the short term?
Well, for sure, the whole idea of self-sufficiency. Again, the casino is the example that, and going back a number of years, we've heard people talking about, there's going to be cutbacks and that the budgets are going to get tighter. You know, it seems like it's always popping up. As long as I've been working with council, that statement has been made. You know, and we see it, but I don't really think there's been any substantive movement towards this idea of self-sufficiency, because I'm of the opinion that while we don't want to let them off the hook, you know, you owe us money or for whatever reason, and we'll take it, but we want to get to a place where we're not relying solely on that income.
Yeah, it's very important, and this seems to keep coming up again and again, is the self-sufficiency and economy, and so I understand what you're saying. Now, politically, what do you think are some of the bigger issues that we're dealing with in terms of outside of Kahnawake?
Well, you know, I mentioned the MRI, or matrimonial real interest. That's one that's going to affect us a lot. As a matter of fact, you know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day about, they were asking about the 1969 white paper. And I says, well, I have a copy of it. If you want, I can send it to you. But they were about, where is it today? What's going on in relation to that? Excuse me. And if you do some research, you'll find that that whole policy was actually broken down into smaller pieces that are actually in play right now, and they're being moved through the system. As a matter of fact, I brought one document here, which is something that we need to be very, very aware of. So it's Bill C-48, an act to amend the Indian Act and to provide for its replacement. So people have been talking about this for years, that, potentially the Indian Act, and we derive some safety issues from it. So the land is protected and things of that nature. There's the tax exemption and all that, the status and things that go along with that. But then if they're moving unilaterally to amend it and to replace it, well, then we need to be involved in this.
Yes, exactly.
So they can't just remove these things, because then what's going to happen? There was a big outcry in 1969 when the white paper came. Everybody banded it together right across the country. So we need to start looking at things like that, building a sense of unity in order to start talking about some of these things. Because it's not only Ganawagi. We don't live in an island.
Right, no, definitely not. I know we have to wrap this up and time sure does fly, but is there anything else that you feel is important to add or that you would like to address openly to the community?
Well, I think this whole idea of collaborating and working together with other communities, with other Ungwe, I was very instrumental in the development and structuring of the Iroquois Caucus, which I think is a very important forum, because we found that the other communities, the other Iroquois communities that are involved, the other 6, have very much the same issues as Ganawagi. So it allowed an opportunity for us to exchange notes and talk about things and strategize. How could we engage the Canadian government, bring our issues forward either through their parties, who some of them are sympathetic, or do we go direct and things like that. So I felt the caucus is one, as far as reaching out and connecting. And we need to continue that. I think Ganawagi was the center for the 7 nations back in the 1700s. So that's another aspect that I think we need to start looking at, reconnecting with the other nations that were involved in the 7 nations. So the Nipissings, and the Wendagis, and in order to start creating more of renewing those alliances for the whole purpose of creating a unified front with a lot of issues that are going to be coming, and a lot of them we may not be aware of right now. So we need people out there looking, finding things, and then just getting the word out.
Okay. Really quickly, why, if people are going to be coming out on July 7th, should they vote for you?
I do have knowledge about, from a cultural perspective, I have a lot of knowledge, a strong foundation. I can talk about rights, which I think is where we're lacking in a lot of areas. We don't talk about rights as much as we used to. I have a lot of experience working on many of these files already. I do have discussions with people. I'm open about discussing a lot of these things. I do bring forward my own personal perspectives on things. And I just think that, if they do place their trust in me, that I would do the best that I could for the community. I live here, my family's here, my family's been here since 1600s. I have 4 kids here, they're in the school system, so, I'm very community oriented.
Okay, well, good luck in your endeavor, and thank you for coming in studio. It was really interesting.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, no problem. And don't go away as we continue our coverage of the elections 2012 with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. Keep it locked here to Channel 4. We'll have more candidates coming up after the quick commercial break.